Okay, thank you for joining us tonight. Let's take you to our guests, the experts, the politicians who we're going to have with us tonight to help us navigate this topic. Ashok Sajanhar, a former diplomat. Sumansi Raman, a political analyst. We also have Ajay Alok, a national spokesperson for the BJP. They're already with us. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us here on the show. Mr. Sajanhar and Mr. Raman, I'll come to both of you first. I just want to lay out for our audiences, give our audiences a historical and political background to this story. After that, Ajay and Adil, I'll come over to you and we'll take a deeper dive into the political aspects of this story. Let's go over first to Ashok Sajanhar. Sir, if I could ask you, the BJP's framing of this, that this is land that was given away. I just want to ask you, historically speaking, since Indira Gandhi, when she addressed this in 1968, she talked about the need to balance a good relationship with Sri Lanka and that being very pivotal in that moment. So then, Mr. Sajanhar, can I ask you, when you look at this decision, is it a decision you understand?
Well, in hindsight, it does appear that it was not a very prudent decision. Because what are you trying to do? Meaning, if you want good relations with another country, do you cede your territory to them? For instance, what China today claims, all of 93,000 square kilometers of Arunachal Pradesh as southern Tibet. So for having good relations with China, do I cede my 93,000 square kilometers of territory to China that we'll have good relations with them if that is done? No, I don't think we do that. It is a very strategically located island. It might not be, as you mentioned, Toya, in your own opening remarks, it might not be very long, it might not be very broad, the area might not be, but it is very strategically placed. And if I were to look at it under the UNCLOS 82, United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, if I had that island, it would have given me a huge exclusive economic zone. That is 200 nautical miles, which means 370 kilometers from that island all around it. It comes to me. And that gives me the right to the fishing. It gives me right to all the underwater resources as far as oil, gas, minerals, everything that is concerned. By signing away that for some nebulous idea of having good relations with another country, then you are giving away all your rights and also your strategic rights. We've seen how China is coming into Sri Lankan waters. It is getting its what it calls research vessels, but actually it's spy ships. So for us to have this access, I think it was absolutely essential. And definitely in hindsight, we can see that it was a folly of immense proportions that was committed at that time, and without seeking a quid pro quo. For instance, even as small a thing as our fishermen, they are taken up, they are arrested by the Sri Lankan police, and they are incarcerated, they are tortured, they do not have the right. So, I would say, even if you are giving it, at least protect your rights, at least save your rights as far as your fishermen are concerned. Now our fishermen are not able to go there. And what Sri Lanka says, okay, we accepted the rights of the fishermen, but that was only to come to rest on that island, to dry their nets, and to visit the Catholic shrine that is on that island. This is really not giving us anything at all. So I think it was a big folly, a huge folly that was committed by India, and which did not take care of our strategic or economic or political interests.
Okay, can I ask you a follow-up question here, sir? So
please.
The follow-up question here is an aspect that has gone up till the courts. I just want to ask you, sir, today we're hearing a lot of leaders ask the BJP in particular, that if this is something that matters so much, why not do something now? Sir, you're a former diplomat, so I want to ask you, is this an issue that's entirely closed? Is it not wise to revisit the past and bring it up again, for example, with Sri Lanka, bring this discussion back to the table?
Yeah, meaning it can be, normally when these things are taken, you want to raise such an issue. I don't think you normally would raise it in the public domain. It would be through closed back channel contacts, discussions, dialogue, developments, and try to push it forward, try to take it forward. And that is how you would conduct these negotiations. You know, they would never be conducted in public, because in public, if these things come, then of course there are emotions on both sides that would be, that would not really be helpful in taking a positive decision as far as the issue is concerned. So it could be
Okay.
taken up, but it would be whether the government has done it on the back channels with its interlocutors, with its counterpart. We would not really know about that so far.
Okay, okay. Let's go over to Mr. Raman. Mr. Raman, I want to ask you, and I just want to give our audiences the context here. This is obviously, regionally speaking, an issue that's been a hot button topic over the last few decades for Tamil Nadu. Sir, can I ask you to just chime in here? The DMK was in power in 1974 when this land was given to Sri Lanka, and the DMK has very recently, they've actually come out multiple times in the last few years to clarify and put on record that they did protest when that took place. The DMK and the Congress are obviously in alliance right now in the INDI, and today a number of observers have said that this is being brought up by the BJP to put a wedge in that alliance. How do you see it, sir?
Yeah, Toya, I hope I'll get at least half the time that Mr.
Of course,
Sajjan
go
has
ahead.
got.
Yeah.
Yeah. First things first, let me put all the facts on the table. The evidence that Katchatheevu actually was a part of India post-independence is very tenuous. That, in fact, was the position taken by the government to say that since it is not defined as a sovereign Indian territory, we do not need to get Parliament's approval to actually write it away as it was done. Second, it was part of the Raja of Ramnad's kingdom for 200 years and so on. But post-independence, its status was a bit of a question mark. Why that was the case has been debated. The second point is, when in 1974 the agreement was nothing to do with Katchatheevu per se. They were drawing up the international maritime boundary line between India and Sri Lanka, which had not been drawn up until that point. So at that point of time, there were two areas which came up for dispute. One was Katchatheevu, and the other was an area called Wedge Bank, which was very close to Kanyakumari, which is again a very, very solid fishing area. So actually, to say that there was no quid pro quo is not actually factual, because the Wedge Bank was exclusively given to India. And in fact, India granted Sri Lankan fishermen 3 years of fishing rights on Wedge Bank, 3 years from 1974. There was also a separate agreement in 1976, which was made, whereby the argument was this drying of nets was not required because the old cotton nets had been replaced by synthetic nets and so on. So there was no need for the drying of the nets and so on. The point about Sri Lankan fishermen being harassed, Indian fishermen being harassed by the Sri Lankan Navy, first of all, it has got very little to do with Katchatheevu, because the most of the incidents that have happened well beyond and well into Sri Lankan territorial waters. In fact, a few years ago, the Sri Lankan Jaffna fishermen, they are also Tamilian fishermen, Sri Lankan Tamils, they actually invited our media to visit Jaffna and to go to the coast and show them at night the Indian fishing boats which were coming very close, virtually close to the shore of northern Sri Lanka. So there are 2-3 issues here. The fourth, very, very important point, Indira Gandhi at that point of time, since Katchatheevu was quote unquote no man's land, did not want international waters between India and Sri Lanka, because that could then mean China or the United States or anybody else could then claim a presence there. So the reason why Indira Gandhi actually said, let's have it either as Indian waters or as Sri Lankan waters. Sri Lanka at that point of time was seen as a much more friendly country than it is probably seen as today, right? So, and it was also seen as much more manageable. Therefore, in order to avoid having an international water between India and Sri Lanka, they decided that this was probably a good deal. 50 years later, anybody can say anything they like. But at that point of time, why not the government of India, now that the Prime Minister has made or seconded this reply, the statement made to the RTI, put out the data. Say, here is incontrovertible evidence that Katchatheevu was a part of India, was an integral part of India and Indian territory. Now you know that the present NDA government has had an exchange with Bangladesh. Everybody knows that, right? And of territory with Bangladesh. That was done a few years ago, and that was supported unanimously in Parliament, including by the Congress Party.
Right.
My point is very simple. One, put out the evidence that Katchatheevu was post-independence an integral part of India. Second,
I believe, sir, so I believe that the state of, I'm not cutting you off, don't worry. I was just going to say that I feel that the state of Madras, at least my research has found the state of Madras failed to show that the Raja had the title. So to second what you're saying, they were not actually able...
See, historically, it was part of the Raja of Ramnath. The Sethupathi king of Ramnath had control over it. No, my second point, and that is very, very crucial, is that the agreement which is available in public domain, and it very clearly shows that the Wedge Bank was ceded to India by Sri Lanka as part of the same agreement. So to say that India just unilaterally just gave it away and Congress party gifted it away out of goodness of their heart, and they caused a great loss to this country. I mean, come on, 50 years later, we are trying to second guess a reason when there has been territory which has been ceded to India by Sri Lanka as part of the same agreement.
So, Mr. Raman, now let me take this discussion to the two political leaders we have with us today. Adil Bopara is with us from the Congress, and from the BJP we have Ajay Alokji, who's with us. Mr. Alok, I want to ask you first to respond to everything that Mr. Raman has said. If I could just summarize, Mr. Raman, just tell me if you agree with this summary. Essentially what he's saying is that this is a simplification. To put forth over here or to argue that this is land that was given away is a simplification when this was actually quite a complex decision that was arrived at with a set of variables in mind. So let me just go over to Ajay Alokji. Mr. Alok, do you want to respond to this first? And then I'll come to you with a follow-up question, sir.
Well, what I heard from Mr. Sumant, it gives me a feeling that if tomorrow China offers me that we'll allow you the rights for 3 years in farming in areas adjacent to Sikkim, and in quid pro quo, give us Arunachal and we'll accede to it because we want a very good ties. That doesn't suffice the reason. When historically we know, don't talk about 50 years back. Fine, it's done 50 years ago, but it was a historical blunder. What we did as an India, because of course the then Prime Minister was my Prime Minister, was our Prime Minister too. There's no doubt about it. But the cost of being statesmen at the cost of integrity and the sovereignty of the country is not in a good taste. That's what Prime Minister meant today. When in 1960, K.C. Sekelwad, then Attorney General of India, simply put up to the Prime Minister, which is there in the records, that India case is much more stronger than Sri Lanka and we should not let this territory go. But in 1961, Pandit Nehru clearly said, and there is a note in the Parliament, I won't hesitate even a second to give that island off. I don't want to get into this controversy. That clearly shows the intent that in 1961, Pandit Nehru had made up his mind that we'll give this to Sri Lanka. I mean, at what cost? You gave Aksai Chin and you said it in the Parliament that not a blade of grass grows there, right? You give Coco Island to Myanmar, you said it goes like this. You give Katchatheevu to Sri Lanka and you said nothing.
Okay.
It has been conveyed to the Chief Minister.
Mr. Alok, I'm not at all cutting you off. Mr. Alok, 1 second. I just want to ask you one more question, and I want to tell Adil and you, both of you, that I promise we're going to give both of you enough time here. Adil, I know I've kept you waiting for last, but Mr. Alok, I do want to ask you, in 2015, the Modi government had pushed through a land boundary agreement with Bangladesh, correct? Yes. And it involved a land swap in which, for example, if you take the Observer Research Foundation's research and looking into that data, that land swap involved a net gain for Bangladesh. Is this not similar?
No, it's not similar at all. Because, see, if you trace it historically, the land border agreement with Bangladesh, prior to becoming a Bangladesh, it was there standing since 1947, 1948. And there was a total dispute of around 24,000 acres. And this dispute kept on meddling, and finally in 2011, when a formal protocol was signed with Manmohan Singh, then also the accord could not be signed. Well, after looking at all the demographically changes area and the area pertaining to Indian community and the people who wants to just change the area, it was mutually decided that 17,000 acres will go to Bangladesh and 7,100 some acres will come to India. Historically, the land agreement share of Bangladesh was much more better. But the demography problem and the problem of redevelopment and the problem of rehabilitation and the issue of concerning them, giving them citizenship, everything got solved and we got a stronger, deeper bilateral ties. We did not compromise on our interests. But here, this Katchatheevu land or the Aksai Chin or the other land I'm talking about, this was given just as a gift.
Okay.
Just by saying that not a blade of grass grows there.
Okay.
Not a single people lives there.
Okay, Mr.
I mean,
Alok.
this you don't eat your.
So you're very,
like
very
this.
clearly, very obviously disagreeing with what it is that Mr. Raman said. Mr. Raman, I'll have to come to you in a second. We have to go to Adil Boparai. We've kept him waiting. Mr. Boparai, you've heard the very strong points over here that we're hearing from the national spokesperson of the BJP. He's essentially saying that this comparison between the Bangladesh or other countries where India has reached agreements and this particular situation in 1974, that doesn't hold true. Mr. Boparai, what do you have to say to that?
Well, Toya, I think it's extremely unfortunate that given the level of political bitterness in our polity today, that you have the ruling dispensation questioning the integrity and the decision-making prowess of the Iron Lady of India, Srimati Indira Gandhi ji. She's the same lady who shed her blood for the unity and integrity of this country. She is the head of the political executive, led the 1971 war. So one has to be really hallucinating to question her integrity or her commitment to India's sovereignty. And it's quite surprising that it's coming from a career diplomat like the esteemed Mr. Sajjanhar. But be that as it may, if you want to go back into history, then what do the two gentlemen have to say about Mr. Ajit Doval accompanying Omar Sheikh and Masood Azhar to Kandahar? What do the two gentlemen have to say about Mr. Modi giving a clean chit to the Chinese in the Depsang plain in the hot springs area, where Mr. Modi very recently has said that there has been no incursion by the Chinese? If there was no incursion by the Chinese, then what were they discussing? Christmas celebration and 13 rounds of talks with the Chinese? So therefore, let's not take our political level to the point of sounding ludicrous. I haven't seen the RTI. So therefore, I'm not going to delve deep into it. But I see an intention by the BJP here. Today, you have unprecedented political vendetta by the ruling government. There is an alteration of the level playing field. Today, the united opposition, which caters and is a representative of 60% of India's vote share, holding a mega rally in New Delhi, highlighting how two chief ministers have become victims of political conspiracy, how the funds of the principal opposition party has been frozen. All this points towards strangulating democracy in this country. And then the BJP's propaganda machinery, their de jure and de facto spokespersons, come on television and give us spiel about something which happened 60 years back without giving a proper historical context. I think this is unfortunate. You know, the gentlemen on your panel can have their political inclination, but let's not take it to a point where you start sounding so ridiculous and start questioning leaders and statesmen who have unflinching commitment, who have demonstrated unflinching commitment to this country's growth.
Okay. So, Mr. Boparai, I do want to take your point now back to Mr. Raman and to Ashok Sajjanhar. Mr. Raman, hindsight is 2020. So, you know, we're sitting here, we're talking about decisions that were made in 1974, for example, without that pinch of salt, that it is perhaps impossible to delve into that moment. But, sir, do go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's very important when we talk of the India-Bangladesh agreement to put things in perspective. India received under that exchange 7,100 and odd acres, and India ceded 17,000 acres to Bangladesh. Period. I think we need to be very clear. 10,000 acres additionally were ceded to Bangladesh. I don't think any opposition party questioned the government, and they said, yes, these are problems that have been festering for so long that have to be resolved, and in the spirit of things, this was the right thing to do. That was including the opposition party, the Congress party in parliament. This happened in 2015. Now, 10,000 acres extra ceded to Bangladesh, and the opposition cooperated. Do you know the size of Katchatheevu? Katchatheevu is about 165 acres. What are we talking about? Something done 50 years ago, and this entire thing that it was gifted away and nothing was got in return. All you need to do is to read that agreement, for God's sake. Read the 1974 agreement. Same agreement
Mr. Raman,
talks
I'm
about
not cutting you off at all. I just want to ask you, because we are on our last minute here. Mr. Sajanhar made a very, very eloquent point right at the beginning about the fact that strategically, even though it's very small, the kind of operative area it opens up, that's important. Do you agree with that point or no?
It was for a strategic reason that they decided, as I told you.
Yeah, right in the beginning.
Mrs. Gandhi did not want international waters coming between India and Sri Lanka because that would open up a complete Pandora's box. So, in fact, it was for a strategic reason. And this place was an uninhabited 160 acres. I mean, some of our politicians own land 3 times that size or 4 times that size, 163-acre island. So, what are we talking about saying that in 50 years down the line, had Katchatheevu been ours, India would have been in a different position and so on. I think it's very unfair. Okay. Yes, but should it have been given away? I mean, I've discussed this ad infinitum with experts in the field on India-Sri Lanka affairs, and many of them have said the same thing. Perhaps, with hindsight, maybe we could have driven a harder bargain. But today, to second guess something which happened 50 years ago, and to say that the government, and especially a Prime Minister who actually carved Pakistan up into two, to doubt her credentials, I think is very unfortunate.
Okay, we've run out of time, but I'd love to thank all of you for joining us. Thank you for allowing us to have this very meaty discussion here. Okay, we're going to move on right now. Breaking news we've got coming in of an entirely different nature. This is breaking news coming in from the northeast. Let's take a look. At least 4 people have died, several others have been injured. This is after a storm hit, this is West Bengal in particular. It's hit the Jalpaiguri district this afternoon. Several houses damaged, trees uprooted. Mamata Banerjee has urgently left for Jalpaiguri tonight to take stock of the entire situation. Remember, we told you that there had been a cyclone warning issued on Saturday itself to multiple different states in the northeast. We're just waiting for our colleague Kamalika to join us to bring us more details. Earlier, we told you that there had been damage in both Assam and in Manipur. This news coming in from West Bengal, 4 dead, several injured. Kamalika, over to you.
See, what we're getting is 4 persons have died in Jalpaiguri and more than 100 has been injured. Now, this has happened in Jalpaiguri, and almost in the evening, it was like a tornado type of storm which took place in this region. Now, as I'm talking to you, Mamata Banerjee, Chief Minister of Bengal, she is heading towards Jalpaiguri to take a stock of the situation, and also she has tweeted that she has directed the district administration to follow the compensation system following the MCC rules. On the other hand, the governor of West Bengal, C.V. Anand Bose, he has opened the emergency control room. He's in touch with the disaster management team, and he will be heading to Jalpaiguri tomorrow. So there has been huge damage. That's what we are getting it from the ground. And also, likewise, politics has started. Mamata Banerjee first tweeted, and after that, Amit Malviya also tweeted that the fact in Garden Reach, when the building collapsed, she did go. She did not. She had a very different approach towards this, and we see half an hour after that, Mamata Banerjee, on her way to Jalpaiguri, she decides to go to Jalpaiguri and stay there and take a stock of the situation. We see governor there. He will be going tomorrow. The candidate, BJP candidate of Jalpaiguri, Dr. Jayanta Rai, he has gone there and visited the injured in hospital. Right now, the administration is full swing, in full action to work on to work on the relief materials, because this damage seems to be huge.
Okay, Kamalika Sen-Gupta joining us from the ground right now. Storm leaving 4 people dead, many injured. This entire region is expected to remain affected until the 5th of this month. We're just going to continue to bring you details on the situation. For now, though, thank you for joining us for the Weekend Explosive Debate right here on CNN News 18.